Hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Mustang Sally Show, hosted by Rango and Sally. Our sponsor for today's show is the Westbury Drive-In Theater, open Wednesday, July 23rd, featuring River of No Return. Join us for hours of entertainment in the comfort of your own car and popcorn.
So, listeners, today's lucky caller is Kathy from Georgia. Welcome, Kathy.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. I love your show.
We're glad to hear that. What question do you have for us today?
Well, I have a 1923 Ford Model T that was passed down to me from my grandfather. He purchased it in 1923, hot off the market. Then eventually he purchased a new vehicle and left the Model T in a garage somewhere to let it collect dust. I was just curious as towards the history of the car.
What a great question, Kathy. Your car probably came off of Ford's newest invention, the assembly line. In case you didn't know, the assembly line is a sequence of machines and laborers working on producing the same object in a more effective way. Before the assembly line, cars were more expensive because of the labor that workers had to put into creating them. But now that the assembly line has been invented, production is much quicker and more efficient. They also didn't include the nice features we have today, such as a large variety of bright colors.
Alrighty, let's talk about the history of the Ford Model T. At this time in history, Ford produces over 61% of the automobiles in America. A former employee at the Ford Motors helped Chevrolet create a competition for the Ford Model T, but this ultimately became an advantage for the people at Ford. In 1923, the Model T was just under 52% of the cars produced in the U.S., causing the auto production to surpass 3.7 million. By 1924, the price of the Model T dropped to $290, and over half of the cars in the world were Ford Model Ts. Eventually, Ford's Model T price dropped to $260, and 10,000 dealers were selling this car, which reached the 2 million mark in production. 2 years later, in 1926, U.S. production of cars reached 4 million. Competition increased between Chevrolet and Ford, making the price of the Model T increase to $350. Eventually, in 1927, cars on the roads increased to 20 million. This year was important in Ford's history because of the closing production of the Model T. 100,000 men lost their jobs, but then eventually Ford created the Model A. Ford is important to American history because he was the one who made the automobile accessible to all of the American public.
Another competition for Ford was General Motors, aka GM. At the time, GM had 12% of cars on the roads and sold 457,000 units and profited $61 million. The social and economic effects are that Americans are able to travel much further than before, vacations have become quite the hit, and it's hard to believe that the car was considered a rich man's toy, whereas now it is a necessity for the average family.
Now that cars have become so popular, landscape has been affected. Roads have been in high demand, and new laws and methods were needed to control traffic in more populated areas. This has also brought along gas stations, diners, roadhouses, even apple pie.
This concludes today's broadcast about the history of the automobile industry. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Westbury Drive-In again. Come join us for a night out. Next week, we'll be discussing the fridge. Which models are the best? Mustang Sally signing out.